All right, good morning again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We're going to go ahead and kick off our webinar today going over Setra's new power meter and all the features we packed into this product. We truly did design this power meter based on our customers' feedback. The software is amazing. It's built for a 2021 experience. The product is just sleek, and we packed in a lot of features which we'll go over today. My name is Michael Josephs. I'm the marketing manager at Setra. I am joined by Mike Soper. Mike Soper is our Northeast regional sales manager for our HVAC line of products. He's also our resident critical environments expert and has lots of experience with the power meter. So we're very excited for him to show you guys the features. So Mike, without any further ado, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Thanks, Mike. So in this segment, we're going to talk about the Setra power meter, the various flavors of the meter, the capabilities and features of it, how that's useful, and then near the end of the presentation, I'll jump to a live meter that is available on the internet, and we'll run through some of the software interface of that as well. So everybody should see my screen. I'm going to advance. And let me click there, and there we go. So principles of a power meter. I'm guessing that most people who are viewing this presentation are familiar with the general principles about how power meters work. Essentially, you bring in a voltage. In the case of our meter, it's anywhere between 80 volts and 660 volts AC. You bring that voltage into one or two terminals. You wrap CTs, standard or Rogowski CTs, around your loads. And then through the magic and wizardry of mathematics, we can infer volts, amps, kilowatts, kVA, peak demand, just lots and lots of data that we'll deliver through the meter. So this data is logged for 62 days in the meter, and we'll talk a little bit about the output signals and how we deliver this to energy management platforms. So that's on the input side. On the output side, we can communicate via BACnet MSTP or BACnet over IP, Modbus RTU or Modbus TCP. There's also a pulse output available on the meter, and all of this can be delivered to your energy management platform or your building automation system for data logging, trending, and viewing. As I mentioned a little bit later, I'll show some of the built-in interface that we have for viewing that 62 days of data that's built into the meter itself for viewing. But if you want to do additional long-term trending, as most people do for billing and sub-metering, these are your output protocols. This meter is built on a lot of customer feedback. When we develop products, we conduct what we call voice of the customer, which is a series of interviews and very open-ended questions where we contact many customers. Anywhere from 30 to 40 customers were probably interviewed for this power meter. Electricians, installers, building management professionals, energy management professionals. So all of that goes into the features that are built into this product, and the result is the Setra power meter family, and I'll show you a few different models that we have. But just comparing a little bit of our first generation meters to the next generation meters. On the left is the Power Patrol model, and it doesn't have as much data logging. It doesn't have the same type of installation reporting, a built-in power odometer. Our new meter has a built-in UL listed enclosure, and we'll talk about the specifics of that and how that works. rotatable display, which is handy for challenging installations where you may need to reorient the power meter either vertically or horizontally, depending on the challenges of surface area or any conduits you might have to work around. IP40 high voltage cover that covers the electronics and the high voltage area. We'll show you that. And intuitive web configuration portal. So all of those features were a result of having our first generation product on the market, getting all of that voice of the customer, and then building the next generation power meter that we're talking about today. So the result is the Setra power meter, or the SPM family. And this is available in 3 models: a 3-circuit model, a 12-circuit model, and a 48 circuit model. The reason that only 2 enclosures are shown there is the model on the left, the one that's kind of oriented like a cube. That is both the 3 and the 12 CT model. So there's a different number of terminal blocks for either 3 or 12 CTs in that model. And then the larger model, of course, is the 48 load model. And then if you kind of go across the bottom, you can see the features that we've built into this. A very easy USB configuration, which can be done either on the bench or in the field at the installation site. When you connect a USB from a PC or a Mac to configure the unit, that will also power the unit. So you don't need to bring any separate power in when you're actually doing that configuration. There are also field selectable CTs that can be used, and those can be either Rogowski CTs or standard split core CTs, or a mixture of both, right? So it's compatible with having both of those on site if you want Rogos for some of those higher load wires. 5-in-1 communications, we talked about 2 flavors of BACnet, 2 flavors of Modbus, and pulse output to the BMS. Data logging up to 62 days of data at 5-minute intervals, and that data is retained through a power cycle and available for backup if communications to the device ever goes down between the energy management system and the device itself. So we can resync and pull that data back out because it's retained in the meter itself. Broadband line power, so anywhere from 600 to anywhere from 80 to 600 volts AC, with about 10% of headroom on that 600. And dual voltage inputs on the 12 load meter and the 48 load meter. And we'll talk a little bit about the specifics there. I also want to mention that this is a revenue grade meter in terms of accuracy. So it conforms to ANSI 12.20 class 0.2, and it meets all of those standards for a revenue grade. When you look at the meter itself, both the 12 channel and the 48 channel are shown here, 12 channel on the left and 48 channel on the right. Really the only difference is the amount of real estate that is required for bringing in 48 CT wires versus 12. But you can see the display is similar, the housing is similar in the way it protects the high voltage connections. CT inputs on the right, you can see them very clearly with removable 3-wire connectors, down what looks like a bus bar there, but that's just signal wire, of course. And then on the left-hand side is the 12 load meter. The actual removable terminals aren't shown there, but those are on the left and the right side. And this diagram just shows you there's an LED status, user interface keys for accessing the device if you happen to be in front of the meter. It shows on the bottom left under the display where the 2 pulse inputs go and the 1 pulse output, along with earth, ground, and then an ability to have your network connections, either Ethernet RJ45 or your Modbus or BACnet RJ45 connectors, or the RS45 for those for 3-wire connectivity to BACnet, MSTP, or Modbus, along with an alarm relay output, your USB connectivity, and then where all the CTs land on those removable blocks. This exploded view of the meter shows you the removable cover that's snaps over the CT wires and the display for a nice, clean presentation when it's permanently mounted. And then that middle PCBA frame assembly that snaps into the rear housing, and it's that rear housing which is UL rated for the high voltage inputs. So when that PCB assembly snaps in, it locks into place so that there is no risk of injury due to accidental access to the high voltage lines that are there. This particular photo shows Setra Power Meter 48 that is mounted, measuring all of the energy characteristics of the Setra clean room at our factory in Boxborough, Massachusetts. So you can see that we've got raceway and electrical enclosures that are included there that bring all of the Rogo and split core CTs from those 2 electrical panels over and then up and into the left-hand side of the meter there with conduit enclosures. So a little bit on traditional versus multi-load meters. When we look at a traditional load meter, what we would need to do in this situation is, if I'm looking at this at this diagram that shows me basically what the specifications are of different panels or loads that I need to meter, I'm going to need to apply this single first generation power meter, which is now a discontinued product, for both my 3-phase loads and my single-phase loads. So you see I've got 1 3-phase load, 6 single-phase on the left, 1 3-phase, and 5 single-phase on the right-hand side. So if I'm going to spec this job and install this job, then this is going to be 13 meters at about $700 a piece. So around $9,100 plus the overall install cost if I was to deploy meters in this kind of configuration. The concept of multi-load metering is in a single configuration of either the SPM48 or the SPM12. I can have dual voltage inputs, so I can bring both my single phase and my 3-phase into the same meter. And then I can look at the building main, I can look at switchgear or MCCs, I can look at my distribution panels and sub panels, and even down to electrical equipment, and bring all of that into the same meter. So that's the concept of multi-load metering. So now, with that concept in mind, let's go back to the diagram that we had before, and let's look at it with an SPM48 applied instead of all of the single meters themselves. So I'm looking at my 3-phase and my single-phase loads across this this takeoff here, and now I'm going to apply just 1 meter for $2,850. So that's roughly $2,800 plus the installation, right? Just about a third or almost a quarter of the cost of of applying multiple meters, instead using multi-load metering. So a lot of economies of scale here for the features that we've built into this family. A little bit on installation flexibility. We talked about the rotating display earlier. What that means is if I have tight configurations in an electrical room where maybe real estate is at a premium and it's not optimal where I would choose to mount this meter, I can bring in my conduit either from the north, from the east, west, or south, then what I can do is I can, in the bottom right-hand side of the slide, it shows you that I can slide down the display module and I can reorient that 90 degrees and then slide that back up so that my conduit openings and all of my CT wiring or high voltage wiring is being brought in a direction that makes sense. So, you know, this means ease of installation. It means more choices and flexibility of where I can actually install this meter when the layout of conduit and other panels and switchgear is more challenging. So why pay more? If you look at other meters and other companies, these are all the elements of components that you have to have installed. Right? Maybe you found a comparative meter and comparative current transformers, but we have fuses built into the Setra meter, so you can save on that cost. We have built-in UL enclosure, which is the back part of the assembly of the meter, so you save that cost. And not just the physical installation and convenience of USB or internet connectivity for setting up the meter, but there's a lot of savings on labor, not just for the physical aspect of this, but you'll see in the demonstration part of this, we'll show other ways that you can save in installation time. So a safer installation, safer and easier data access. So we talked about on the top left there, the safety of having that UL enclosure as part of the meter itself with the CT and the display PCB assembly that snaps over that to protect it. IP40 installation characteristics, and then an ability to both connect to and also power the meter from simple USB connectivity to a laptop computer. Once I get into the meter itself, I'm going to access it by either USB or by an IP address, and that could be a local IP address that it ships with, or if you have it installed and you've already got a DHCP address that's assigned to it. Once I get into the meter, we have these intuitive halo dots that tell you at every step of the way whether or not a CT or a voltage input or a component of your configuration, including pulse meters and the network, whether those are actually configured or not. So the general codes that we use are gray is unconfigured, green is a fully configured, orange is partially configured and haven't, generally that's either an error or I haven't uploaded it to the meter yet, or red might be an error in the configuration and I'm going to have to refer to my documentation and make a different choice there. Another thing that is an important aspect that we were asked for with our voice of the customer was give me an installation record so that I'm not hand scribbling this stuff at the job site. Something that is easy to capture, log, and then report as built for the actual job. So in this case, the installation record is actually captured in the meter itself. So I've gone into the configuration, and once it's fully configured, I log all of this information, right? Where's the address of the installation? Who is the electrical contractor? Where's the panel location, or if there's any codes for a campus or building or electrical room. All of this, including the full configuration of the unit, is completely captured in the meter itself, and that can be exported to a PDF file as well. So it's always there at the job site, always accessible over the network, and always available to be able to print this on a moment's notice. So now I'm going to jump to a software demo of the meter. How are we doing for time? Well, we're doing great for time. So I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to bring up my power meter interface here. And you can see in the URL, this is just the, I have a demo meter that happens to be online at a publicly available IP address. So this is the first screen that I get. I log in with my password. And I'm into the meter itself. I can log out, I can reload any of the characteristics here, but generally my navigation is going to be by the left-hand bar here. So from a high level, I have all of my setup and initial configuration. Most of that doesn't need to change. I'm going to show you Power Analytics and what's available there. There's an event log that captures any changes to the configuration or alarm parameters or additional data events that I'm going to look at. And then I have an ability to set up alarms, and those alarms can enunciate over the network or out the relay output that's on the meter itself. System configurations, an ability to export. And then one of the features that brings a lot of smiles to people's faces is actually the help. And I'm going to start there. On the help screen, you have the full data sheet, the full quick start guide, the installation and operations manual, all of the BACnet objects, all of the Modbus registers. So this would take maybe a minute or so to load, so I'm not going to access that. But basically, all of the documentation that is available for this meter is also available when you're setting this up, whether it's on the bench or at the job site. And what that means is that when you're doing this configuration, if you have any questions about what the configuration is for a CT, what changing polarity might mean for a CT, or how it's going to grab a DHCP address. Any questions that you have is probably going to be answered by information that's built into the meter itself that's easy to access. So let's start with the configuration. Just the general settings, general device settings about the time zone that it's in, the real-time clock, and any information about just the broad parameters of how you're setting up the meter, including what's usually important for the billing aspects of this is what's my demand window day and what's my billing cycle day, right? And then what's the billing cycle time. So a lot of information is available here for you to make those changes and align that with your billing cycles. The name of the device, if that happens to be specific for a given location, panel number, all of that is set up in general settings. And then because this is a 12 load meter, I've got both voltage in 1 and voltage in 2. And remember, these can be different. I can be bringing in 240 on one of those and 480 on the other. So I can have single phase for VIN 1 and I can have 3-phase for VIN 2. And then as I select these, in this case, this is a residential application. So I've got 120 coming into VIN 1, and then on VIN 2, I've got my 240. And for and 240 is 2-wire single phase, and this is a 3-wire single phase split phase that I've got incoming for this residential application. What this is and the way this is wired is so that I have visibility to both my 240 circuits and my 120 circuits, and you'll see that when we're looking at the CTs for this meter. But even though this particular demonstration is residential, this is a full commercial grade, revenue grade meter for up to 660 volt applications. So remember that about the varying loads for VIN 1 and VIN 2. Then when I do my load setup, this is where I'm going to map my CTs. So in this case, because it's residential, I've got my main that's coming in on CTs 1 and 2, and then I only have one CT for some of these other circuits, a heat pump, air conditioner, range, but these can be sub panels, multi-load panels. These can be large motors or pumps that you might want to monitor at a university or a hospital or a commercial building. All of those would be assigned here for the load configuration. So if I'm going to change these or add new ones, then I can name it. I can say which voltage input it's going to apply to. VDI happens to be my virtual device instance. So especially for BACnet, for example, each one of these loads is going to have its own virtual device instance. And then I'll be able to look at those objects and all of those data parameters by inspecting that VDI and all the sub-objects that are under it. And in this case, you can see the CT map is grayed off to the right. I've mapped CT1 and CT2 to this particular load. Off on the left-hand side here, I'm going to cancel out of the screen because I don't want to change my configuration. But off to the left-hand side, you can see these are noted in orange because the software thinks I'm about to change this configuration. And so this tells me the configuration isn't yet complete. But if I'm going to change this, then it's going to request me to actually do an upload to the meter after that. But I'm going to cancel that, so those will stay green. So I've done all of those assignments here of the CT numbers based on the blocks and the wires that I've brought in and done this mapping. The CTs themselves are configured with the CT inputs configuration screen. So here I'm looking at CT1, and that's why there's a circle around this green indicator. If I was going to look at CT9 over on this side, that's going to show you that I have a 20 amp standard split core across this wire for the air conditioner, and that's what the voltage characteristics are. But I could change that here. I could make this a different amperage for split core, or I could make this a 12, 24, or a 36-inch ROGO. Or if you have other CTs that you want to use, you can have user-defined CTs as well, as long as they meet the voltage and the signal characteristics that are compatible with our meter. If I happen to wire one of these CTs in the wrong direction, in the wrong polarity, I don't have to go back into the panel and dig out that CT and flip it around. I can just change the polarity here, and now it's going to flip the polarity of that, so I don't have a reversed CT possible. So a lot of flexibility for modifying and varying the CT loads here. On the communication side, I mentioned at the outset of the presentation here, this can be set up for one of these 4 configurations for output and data communication, or pulse output as well. In this case, you see I've selected none. It says, do you want to upload this to the meter? And upload to the meter is on the top right-hand side here. So if I wanted to change this to Modbus TCP, for example, I could do that, align the port, and then do that upload. But in this case, I'm not going to change this. I'm just going to move on to pulse inputs. You can also see the network characteristics. I can have either a static IP address or let my my router assign that IP if that's probably the most common configuration there. Setting up pulse inputs, I have one of these inputs set up for gas, so that's enabled. Set it up for you know, whatever you want for gas. This is context sensitive. So if I'm picking water, then my units of measure can be water here. I'm going to go back to gas, and you can set any scalar that you want for what a pulse happens to mean for that particular meter that you're configuring the pulse input for. For alarm setups, I can set any different types of alarms for overpower, underpower, phase loss, peak demand, lots of different characteristics that I can set for alarm types. And then whether or not I'm going to indicate an LED on the display of the meter itself or trigger the relay output. And my alarm set point, deadband, and then any delay that I might want for managing transient alarms, you can set that up as well. And then coming down to installation report, this is all that data that you saw on the report example that was sent out earlier. After I've done an installation, I might want to have what my measured power meter values are, and I log that during the installation time, and all of that can be exported to the as-built report in a PDF file. Power analytics, I have both an odometer where I can look at live characteristics of my meter. In this case, I've got at least a week's worth of data on this particular meter, and I can look at it by CT if I want. You know, one side of my meter, one polarity of my meter is pulling a little bit more than the other. That's not unusual. But you can see what these characteristics are, and you can also export this data to an Excel spreadsheet. And then outside of an energy management system, if you want to view trends that are either live or hourly or daily trends, I can pick whichever load I want to see here, and then I can see what I've picked live data, but there's trend and bar charts and line charts available for hourly data and daily data as well. But this will just show you a little bit of what happens to be going on in the meter that I have. So pretty steady demand, pretty even demand. There are event logs that talk about user login events, reboot events, saved port configurations. Different events are shown here. The alarm status for any alarms that I might have configured and what the LED states might be. And then overall system configuration. So if I wanted to update the firmware version on this, I could do that either directly connected here via USB, or I could do this fully over the network as well. So all you need is an IP address and any browser to be able to update the firmware on a job site. I can do a full reboot here. I can reset all the settings back to factory, or wipe my trend data if I want to start from scratch for a given user interface. So one of the system logs here tells me that I made a change to the configuration, but I didn't upload it. So this communications variation here that you see that's not complete, it's just telling me that that's one of the things that it's logged in the system. And then I can export all of these characteristics, select all or select single or multiple here. And I can export these to PDF or Excel spreadsheet. And the same thing goes for alarm log. And we talked a little bit earlier about how all of the documentation for the meter is available in the meter itself. So there you go. That's a lot of information. And Mike, there might be some questions that have come in at this point. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks everyone for joining us today. Like Mike said, we will open up the floor for questions. I do have a couple that have come through. You can ask questions using the chat function within your control panel for GoToWebinar. You should be able to just type it out. We'll read it and Mike will answer it. I did want to put a couple polls out there as the questions are starting to come in, just to get a little bit of information on what's going out there in the field right now. So I'm actually going to launch a poll. You should be able to see it in a moment. It should pop right up. So the first poll question is, what are your power meter applications? As we're selling this, these are the top 5 we've generally seen out in the field, but we're just curious to see, the folks on the call, where are you using power meters most frequently? So I'll give about 30 seconds to choose an answer on that, and then we'll go ahead and open up Q&A. So Mike, as that poll is going on, why don't I begin by asking this first question. So if my voltage source is greater than 600 volts, can I still use this power meter?
You can, yes. There is a way to step down that voltage so it's compliant with the ceiling of 600 volts for the meter. And then there's a scaling factor that we have in the meter itself. So, for example, if you had, let's say you had, 2400 volts coming in instead of 600, you would step that down to 600 and then apply a 4-to-1 factor, so the meter can understand what the voltage is that it's reading, and then manage the input voltage correctly.
Great, thanks, Mike. And I'm going to go ahead and close this poll, give people another 5 seconds to answer it. Thanks so much for submitting that information. All right, so I closed that poll. There's another poll coming up. Just generally speaking, again, just wanting to know what's out in the field right now. How many power meters does your company use annually? Feel free to vote on that. I'll keep it up, and Mike, I'll ask another question that came in. So if I have CTs installed at the job, I'm assuming that the person asking this question probably has CTs, could be Setra CTs, might be another company's CTs. Can I use those existing CTs on this power meter?
You can use those existing CTs, but you need to check the voltage output on those CTs. I think standard split core might be 330 milliamps, and I think there's well, I shouldn't guess at what the characteristics are. We have specifications for both our split core and Rogo CTs on our website, and those data sheets show the output signal for those. As long as the CTs that you're using on the job site are compatible with the same signaling output, then those CTs can be used as user-defined in the configuration of the power meter itself.
Great, thanks, Mike. Here's another question that just came in. Is the accuracy of this meter billing grade? Also, does this meter show peak demand?
Yes to both. So it is a billing grade meter because that's what we call also known as revenue grade. It's compliant with ANSI 12.20 class 0.2, which is the standard that we use to meet revenue grade. And peak demand is one of the values that that you can both log and access for a 62-day trend.
Great,
or
thanks.
pull it off the meter into your energy management system, and you can log it that way as well.
Thank you. I'll give folks another 5 seconds or so before I close this last poll, and then we'll get to the rest of the Q&A. Again, we are recording this webinar, so if anybody's interested in going back to see anything that Mike's discussed, we'll distribute it shortly after this webinar concludes. So thanks everyone for voting on that poll. Appreciate it. Do I need a separate enclosure for this new power meter?
You don't. The existing power meter, this enclosure is designed with the dark gray part is a UL rated enclosure, so that's approved for use for high voltage up to 600 volts, and the light gray housing snaps over that securely so that the high voltage is protected. So you don't need any separate enclosure for this.
Yeah, and I want to really highlight that. I think it really sets Setra's power meter apart from a lot of what's available in the market today. There's a huge cost savings associated with our product actually having the body be the enclosure. It takes up a lot less space, and obviously it's one less thing to purchase. Mike, here's another question that came in. How does it handle time of day metering?
So the meter itself will keep through our cycle. It will retain the time of day. So there's a real-time clock that's built into the meter itself. So once you've set that clock, it's basically going to timestamp all of the values that you have for objects that you're going to be able to access and load to your energy management platform.
Here's another great question that came in. Can the meter communicate using more than one protocol at the same time?
I don't think so. I'd like that the person that asked that question to send us their contact information, because I'd like to look into it a little bit further. But I believe once you've set it for either BACnet or Modbus, then the meter is going to communicate with that protocol, not one or the other. But I'd like to do a verification on that and send that back out to
Sure. Yeah, we do have that asker's information, so we can talk to Tom Lish, our product manager for this product, and get a clear answer on that. That same person asked another question. Is the enclosure NEMA 4X rated?
I don't know the answer to that, so we'll have to get that information back to them.
Sure, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but I believe it is NEMA rated. I will look on the data sheet, and again, we can ask our product manager. Let's see. Are these meters readily available right now? I'll field that one, Mike. I know the answer to that. Yes. They are very much available. We've been selling many of these over the last few months. You know, now that we're seeing some things opening back up, even with the COVID situation, demand has increased, but we really ramped up production of this product because we knew the demand that we would see. And we still have stock available to ship same day or next day. So if anybody's interested in purchasing this power meter, it is available right now to order through our website or through one of your RSM if you're already a customer of ours. Let's see. Great questions coming.
I was looking through the enclosures, and NEMA 4 is not jumping off the page. But let us do a deeper dive on that, and we can get that information back out to the group.
So here's another question that came in. Does the trend data, or is the trend data stored on the device or on, well, the question reads, or in the external software? So Mike, I might be able to clarify there, but why don't you go ahead and answer that?
Yeah, I think I understand the question. So all of the data, 62 days of data at 5-minute intervals is stored on the meter itself. So when you access the meter at the meter's IP address and you're viewing the trend data, that's your web browser driving our, basically activating the web pages that are built into the meter itself to extract and visualize that data. So it all happens on the meter itself and then is presented to your browser. So you can see up to 62 days of trend data without any other energy management platform. If you want to see more than 62 days of data, then that's when you're going to either export reports of the meter itself at least 62-day intervals, or pull that data into an energy management platform where you can now look at the data that's been pulled into that platform and running that software's trend data. But so the short answer is both. There's 62 days built into the meter itself for trending, or longer term via an energy management platform.
And Mike, we actually do have an answer on the enclosure. Our crack technical support team got back and answered to me very quickly. So our documentation says the enclosure of the power meter is its own NEMA 1 rated electrical enclosure. So it looks like it's a NEMA 1 rated enclosure. So hopefully that helps answer that question. We do have a few more, so we will take as much time as we need to answer all these questions. Again, if you have to jump off, this is recorded, so feel free to look at that recording later. But here's another one that came in, Mike. Please provide details on the zip tie CTs. They go on to say, we have some larger sub panels with multiple conductors, and traditional split CTs are difficult to get around all of the conductors.
Yeah, interesting question. So on the screen that we're looking at here, actually, let me back up to another one, and then I'll. Okay. So we've designed this meter so that there is ample real estate. For example, on the left-hand meter, there's this is the SPM 12. So there's ample space on the left and the right-hand side, and the terminal blocks basically run up and down these gray bars that are on the left and the right side of the display, and then there's removable terminal blocks. So your CT wires get pulled in through conduit here, and then these 4 points that are on the lower light gray section, these are actually channels where zip ties can be put in to secure all of those cables across the front. And then when the finished housing snaps on the front of this, there's even ample depth in that housing for any wires that might be protruding beyond these terminal connections here. On the right-hand side is the 48-channel meter, so you can imagine that there's going to be a lot more wires that are brought into this. That's why there is additional real estate, both with depth and height, in order to bring those in as well. And these you can see them on the dark gray. These are all zip tie available anchors. I think there's 2, 4, 6, 8. There's 10 on the right and 10 on the left that will be able to secure those cables there. Good question.
Yeah, great question. And I will say, just being part of the design committee as we were taking customer feedback, that was a huge element, as Mike alluded to, that we focused on, was just making sure there was plenty of room in there. We were thinking of the installer first and foremost with this power meter. So we wanted things to be intuitive and we wanted things to have lots of options. So yeah, great question. Mike, there's a few more, so I'll keep fielding these as long as people have questions. On a 3-phase meter, we have one in a new building. Currently, the vendor brought in kWh kilowatt hours on each leg. Can kWh total be displayed?
I think we display individual kWh for each leg rather than a total sum. Let's put that question out to our technical support team also to see if I'm correct, but that's my belief, is that we have individual.
Great, and we do have the person that asked that information. So if we're not able to get it on this call, we'll certainly email a more thorough answer. Here's an application-specific question. Have these models been installed in industrial applications such as the oil and gas sector?
I'm probably not the best person to ask for that. In the Northeast, I'm aware of mostly commercial building installations rather than oil and gas. But let's field that to the broader Setra team, and we'll get back to them with an answer on that. A question that we might ask in reply is, what particular aspects of oil and gas might this be applicable to? So, maybe the actual application rather than an industry might be an appropriate question to ask back.
Sure. Yes, we'll get some clarification there. I know that we've sold into many diverse applications, with the majority of them really being, around tenant billing, general power management, cost savings, those types of applications. But I'm sure there's some oil and gas applications within what we've sold power meters into so far. Can the meter be set up to automatically download data on a set frequency for backup? So is there some sort of backup control that you're aware of, Mike? Again, this might be a question for our product management team or our technical support.
Yeah, so the meter, as long as the meter is on one of the networks that supports IP, BACnet, or Modbus protocol, you'll be able to pull the data from the meter itself. But the meter is not set up to push data. So, for example, there's no part of the configuration where you would set it up to say on the 1st of the month, push all the data out of the meter. It's more of a pull mechanism. But there is a full retention of 62 days of data on the meter itself. So, that's really designed around a buffer of an additional month. So if you wanted to pull a month's worth of data, then you'll always have a month's worth as a buffer there in case there's, any communications failures with the energy management platform. You can always catch up.
Great. How do I connect the device to the configuration software?
The device is it's connected with let's see, I'll show the configuration itself. So this slide shows the connection of just a standard USB port to an older style USB connector that plugs into the front of the meter itself. So this is designed to be compatible with really any PC or computer that you can connect with this style of USB cable. Nothing proprietary about it. You can get this cable from any supplier, Walmart, Amazon, anywhere online. You can also set up the meter to be accessible via RJ45. So if I had the cover off of this, actually, let's look on the bottom left-hand side of the screen. Underneath the display, there's actually an Ethernet cable. So that cable style is called RJ45. So another method of connecting a computer to this might be just using a standard Ethernet cable that you use with any home router. Again, nothing proprietary about it. There's just an ability to have either one of those cables used for the configuration.
Thanks, Mike. I believe we have some clarification on a question that was asked before, again, from our crack technical support team. So this is around showing a total kilowatt hours. We display live data per load. So that would be the information for each CT. And we do believe that there is a total in the software. So again, we'll get some clarity from our product manager on that, but it looks like we can display a total within the software.
Okay.
Great, few more questions. This is great engagement, so please continue to ask. What app would we need to use to get the data pulled from the meter? This is exactly what we are looking for in a meter, is to do every month reports for billing purposes. So Mike, I could probably field that one. Again, our software built into the meter, as well as some of the remote communication protocols that Mike has discussed, pretty easily allow you to create customized monthly reports. I believe you'd have to do a manual pull on the report, but it's something that you could do, you know, if you're trying to do this for a billing purpose or just a general energy management purpose. Do you want to add any more light, or did I cover it there, Mike?
Yeah, so I think the question was around what type of software is available on the open market to do broader energy management trending. I'm not familiar with the kind of software that the question is based around. The software from Setra is focused as a web server for that 62 days of data in the meter itself. Any other third-party software, I'm sure there's many. Setra doesn't make that software, so it's possible that product management might be aware of some of the applications that are available on the open market, but we would have to field that question at a later date.
Sure. And for all the folks on the call, usually we would have Tom Lish, our product manager, who knows the product inside out, on this call. Mike Soper, thanks so much for doing a substitution last minute. Had to jump on. Tom ended up being busy during this time slot. There's a few more questions. I know we're running up against noon here on the East Coast, so I want to be cognizant of everyone's time, but maybe we can power through these. What are the current capacity ranges that can be monitored with these devices? Or maybe in a different way, what is the CT maximum? What is the CT maximum current capacity? Yeah,
great question. So with standard split core CTs from Setra, you can go up to 400 amps load. And beyond that, if there is another compatible standard CT that meets the signaling characteristics that is compatible with our meter, which should be widely available on the market, then you can use larger than 400 amp loads. When you're talking about ROGO style CTs, there's much more headroom on the amperage rating for those. The 12, 24, and 36-inch ROGOs that Setra sells can handle up to 5,000 amps of draw. And so that would be, I think the range is 50 amps to 5,000 amps That's the range for the compatibility with Setra's product family.
Great. Mike, we're right up against the top of the hour. I'll ask these last several questions to get quick answers. I encourage anyone else who has a question to ask it on your control panel there for GoToWebinar, and we do have your information so we can reach back out with answers because we are running up against the time here. So I'll rapid fire these questions. Do you provide certified startup? How do we get firmware updates? And the last question is, a problem I've seen in the past is a CT wired backwards. Do you have a solution for that?
Okay, I'm going to start with the last one. The last one is if CTs are wired backwards, you can switch the polarity in the software itself. So just connect to the meter, either IP or USB, and then modify, just slide that slider, and that CT polarity is corrected. You don't have to go into the panel. As far as firmware goes, the latest firmware is always available on Setra's website, or you can contact your regional sales manager and they'll send it to you, and then you'll be able to update that in the meter itself, either on site or remotely over a network connection. As far as certified installers, Setra is the manufacturer, but so we don't offer a certified installation itself, but we do have phone support and technical support by email to guide you through that, plus the documentation that's built into the meter itself, or we can connect you with some authorized Setra resellers in your region.
Yeah, great support, great answer to that. And I really want to hit home on our support team. We have dedicated customer support team members as well as a dedicated technical support team. So if you call, you will talk to an actual person. My team on the marketing end has spent a lot of time beefing up our FAQ section of our website. And as Mike said, we have many, many documents online available, a quick start guide as well as a more thorough installation guide to help you get this meter installed, where Setra always stands ready to support our customers. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us for this full hour. I really appreciate all the questions that you guys had for us. Again, if we didn't get to something here, or if you are interested in buying a meter, please go to Setra.com, go to the Power Meter product page, and fill out the form there. If you mentioned that you were on this webinar, I will see that inquiry come in, and I will make sure it gets to our team in an expedited fashion. Again, I know we mentioned a few of these questions. We will confer with our product manager, Tom Lishwith, and we will answer those questions shortly after this wraps up. Again, this was recorded, and we will distribute it shortly. Thank you, everyone, for your time today. Thank you for joining, and thank you, Mike Soper, for bringing us through this presentation. Have a great rest of your day.
Very good. Thanks, everyone.